On this episode of Insight, is honesty always the best policy?
I decided to work with horses because they filled a void. They're magnificent animals and they help you heal. They feel your feelings and it is a pleasure to deal with them. It's just a joy. I am a veterinary surgeon. I had a baby without letting anyone know. I kept the secret for 40 years. I just buried it as deeply as I could. At the time I found out I was pregnant, I was working on a horse farm for a Catholic doctor that had a large family and was very powerful, I guess, influential. Oh, you're gorgeous, aren't you? I felt I had to keep it a secret because I was a Catholic girl gone bad, basically. Nobody knew until I was in labour. The doctor took me into hospital. I don't have a lot of memories of what occurred. I know that I must have given birth to my son and they took him out of the room, and my strongest memory is that I was left on the table, freezing cold. After I gave birth, I was told that the baby had died and that I should get on with the rest of my life. The only papers I remember signing were discharge papers. They told me I couldn't leave until I'd signed those papers, and I thought that was the end of it. I was absolutely sure that my family would cast me out. They wouldn't be happy about it. So I kept the secret.
Di, after you left the hospital that day, you didn't tell anyone about losing your baby at birth. Why not?
It was because of the shame of being unwed, being ignored, having no support. It didn't occur to me to tell the father because I thought, what was the point? What would I say? I was pregnant, I had the baby died.
So the baby's father wasn't in your life at the time?
No, I was a nanny basically in Canada, and the family that I was working for had horses, so I was looking after the children as well as looking after the horses, and they also had a son who was at home and two daughters, and the son and I started a relationship. He was my first love. He was a kind young man and he was interesting. We shared the same sort of interests in horses, etc. And then I lost my job, and then I had to leave Canada. I had no visa and I didn't know I was pregnant, so I came home.
How did carrying that secret affect you?
I was fearful. It made me bury what had happened so deeply that I couldn't process anything. And then, as you grow, you have to move on. It's as though you shut that. And I don't know if this is conscious or unconscious, but that was a way of surviving. In some ways I was lucky because when I was in Canada I worked with horses and I've always had a love of horses, and I always wanted since I was little to be a veterinary surgeon. So I worked as hard as I could to immerse myself in looking after animals and horses in particular because they bring such pleasure to your life. And then I set out to educate myself. And so I went to university and got my undergraduate degree and then an MBA and then a master's in health security.
You went on to marry and you had 2 more children.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever share with them about your firstborn?
No, I didn't tell anyone at all.
Rachel, what did your adoptive parents tell you about your birth mother?
That she was single and living a nomadic life and didn't have a partner because they had had a short relationship, and that she wanted me to grow up in a family home, and that's why she'd given me away.
Were they open with you about the fact that you had been adopted?
Yeah, my whole life I always knew I liked being adopted. I still like being adopted.
Did you accept that explanation growing up?
Yeah, there was no reason to suspect that anything was different to that because they were so forthcoming with it. So it was a really reliable narrative that, yeah, there was this woman and she'd grown up on a farm. There were even specific things, you know, she was really good at spelling. You're really good at spelling.
And that came from a booklet that they had?
Yep. So they would refer to it as the information that we were given, and in the booklet we were given, that was how I was told the information, and it seemed that that's what they knew.
Your adoptive parents separated when you were 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that leave you?
It was awkward because the story to that point had been that I was given to them so that I could have a dad, and my dad didn't live with me anymore. So that was kind of confusing.
When you were 13, you learned something which had been kept a secret from you. What was that?
I found out that the woman who gave birth to me had paranoid schizophrenia, and that there were extra elements to my story that I didn't know, that had become relevant because I was a teenager and I wanted to smoke marijuana. So I didn't smoke weed because of it. It changed my behaviours in a good way, I guess, but then because all of a sudden there was this extra information and that didn't fit the narrative of this happy-go-lucky, good-at-spelling woman, I became obsessed with it and wanted to know more information and nagged my mum a lot for more information, and she said she didn't have any.
When you turned 18, you were entitled to access more information about your birth mother. What did you discover?
I discovered that she had not given me away, that she had not agreed for me to be taken, and that I was fostered and then put into deferred adoption with my parents, and then I was actually 5 when I was adopted, and my name was changed.
And you received a box of information from the Community Services Department?
Yes, and in the box was just extraordinary amounts of information about the woman who'd given birth to me, her family, and my sisters, who I didn't know existed.
Did that box full of information match what was told to you as a child and included in that booklet that your parents referred to?
No.
Did your adoptive parents know the truth?
A lot of the information, they just weren't given. They were encouraged to provide the information from the booklet. They didn't know what was in the box. So the box included hundreds of letters from the woman who gave birth to me that were written to me, written to my mum, and none of them were given to my mum or me. They had lots of photos that the woman who gave birth to me, her family had given to the Department of Community Services. The woman who gave birth to me, drew lots of pictures for me, because actually that's what she was able to do. She was able to write letters that were like a child writing to a friend, and she'd wanted me to know my whole life who she was and tried to connect with me.
Do you wish you'd been told the truth when you were a child?
Yes. Once I was 18 and discovered that, I had sisters that I hadn't even met, I felt just utterly betrayed. I felt so angry, and I felt like everyone knew but me, and I'd been denied a relationships that were mine. They were my family.
We often keep secrets thinking we're protecting people. How do you feel about that?
Keeping the secret is what is traumatic. The truth is not, though it might be confronting to other people, it's not confronting to me. It's confronting that I can't trust institutions, I can't trust people.
Paul, was honesty an important value in your family growing up?
Yes, it was. My parents were both post-war immigrants from the Netherlands and the Ukraine, and they came to Australia with not a lot. At that time, the Catholic Church was very strong and had a great presence in those communities.
How devout was your family?
Very devout, and it was the trust that they placed in the institutions that it was, so that when the local priest came around seeking altar boys, my father and his brother were, signed up and became part of that, and it was an integral part. It was going to church on Sundays, but also taking part in all the rituals and other events around the church.
Back in the day, the local priest played a big role with Catholic families. Yours was Father Vic Rebeo. What was his relationship with your family like?
Mum and Dad met when they were 14. They were childhood sweethearts, and Rebeo married them at 18. They had abusive families as well. And Rebeo stepped in and started becoming a father figure to them and looking after them. Each Sunday, the ritual was that he would come to our house, he'd finish Mass with his parishioners, and he would come over and he would proceed then to cook the family dinner on a Sunday night, sit at the head of the table and carve the roast and hold court.
How did you view that at the time?
I thought it was normal. We had to call him Grandpa. He had a hat made with Super Gramps on it and used to wear it around.
What was your personal relationship like with the family priest?
He was very good to us because he also, we were relatively modest means, and he would shower us with gifts. As a young child, when someone's giving you gifts, you don't stop to ask where they're coming from. You just enjoy them and know no better.
When you were 9, things changed. Would you like to share what happened?
During that time, he sexually abused me.
That abuse went on for several months. Did you tell anyone?
No, not at the time.
Why didn't you tell anyone?
I thought it was normal. No, I didn't think I had anything to tell.
What happened when you were 16?
It was at that time my father told my family that he was also abused.
Your father was also abused?
Yeah, from the age of 9 to 15 by Rebeo.
By the same man?
Yeah.
How did you react to hearing that, Paul?
It was definitely very hard to hear. I was 16 at the time. It was a great shock because your whole life, everything you knew to be true stopped at that point. I certainly didn't have the tools or the capacity to cope with it at the time, no.
Michael, you're a psychologist and you research secrets and their impacts. Why do we keep secrets?
We're trying to protect ourselves or protect someone else or protect our relationship with someone.
How does holding on to a secret affect us?
So while we're protecting our reputation or how we look to others, at the same time, the moment you decide to keep a secret is the moment you have to live with that secret. And if it's something that you're struggling with or something that you feel alone with, it's so hard to cope with it alone.
Danielle, you were one of the youngest ever head coaches in the AFL at age 36. How important was football to you?
I fell in love with football from a really young age. I saw it as my way out. And at times I had what I can now identify as little Danielle. Something a little bit different. I didn't really know what it was, but I felt isolated. I didn't make friends easily enough. I retreated into my own world, and that made things really, really difficult.
You began to emotionally transition 8 years ago. How long before that did you begin to question your gender identity?
It goes back to I was probably 6, 7 years of age.
Before you began to transition, you were married with children. Did you share that part of yourself with your family?
With my then wife in the early 2000s, we ended up splitting up for different reasons 10 years after, but my children had absolutely no idea.
How did holding on to that secret for so long affect you?
Depression, anxiety, shame, embarrassment, fear, particularly the industry that I grew up in. What people would think of me, what would they say? So to keep that close was really, really difficult.
Was there anyone you felt like you could open up to?
No, I just kept it to myself. I'd had psychologists and psychiatrists and counsellors and mentors my whole life, but I would never ever talk about this one issue. And then one day it just came out. So pretty much I was whisked off to gender psychs, endocrinologists, did the testing, and it was really lovely to find out when I was told you do have and have always had gender dysphoria. And it was like that boat anchor lifted off my chest. I could be me. And it wasn't a decision about transitioning. That was always going to happen. The decision was to be here and be my authentic self or not be here at all.
Michael, is who we confide in important?
Absolutely. Confiding a secret in another person can just be so helpful because it's hard to find emotional support on your own. It's hard to find perspectives other than your own. And so when you're choosing who to talk to, you want to choose someone who can keep your secret safe and someone you can trust to talk through it with you.
What are the most common secrets we tend to keep?
So we've developed this list of 38 categories of secret that we know is very comprehensive, because when we show people that list and ask people which of these secrets are you keeping, the average person is keeping 13 of those secrets at any given point in time.
Is a secret the same thing as telling a lie?
No, and the difference is important because you do not need to lie to keep a secret. There's plenty of secrets we can keep without telling any lies. At the same time, often a significant lie we've told is part of our secrets as well. The most common secret is having told a significant lie.
Do you think there's ever a good reason to lie?
Definitely. An example that always comes to mind to me is, you're arriving at the party with your friend and they say, "How does my outfit look?" If you're just arriving at the party, the answer is it looks good. If you're just going to needlessly hurt someone's feelings, that's a time when many people agree is sort of the more compassionate choice is what we might call a white lie.
Chelsea, growing up, what did you think about telling lies?
As an autistic woman, I didn't really understand lying for a very long time. I found it incredibly confusing because I always told the truth, so I assumed what other people said was the truth. And it just opened up a whole can of worms for me. It took me a good number of years to learn what that was.
When did you start lying?
When I started actively lying on purpose, I was 15 years old. I had become homeless, not by choice. I didn't want to be put into foster care. I didn't want my school to know. I didn't want my friends to know. So I lied to everybody, to my friends, to my work, to my school. And this is what I call ethical lying. I was lying to a lot of older men because they were attracted to me and I was a child. I was 15 years old. And I thought that is ethical to lie and pretend that I'm attracted to them to get money to survive, to get money for food. And this wasn't in exchange for anything. It was just pretending that I'm interested and then going, yeah, okay, bye.
So you started lying at about 15. Did your lying evolve after your teenage years?
Yes, it evolved significantly when I had children, specifically my middle child. He has cerebral palsy. When he was 4 months old, I went to a doctor and I said, "My son has cerebral palsy." And the doctor said, "No, he doesn't." And I'm like, okay, he does. So I went to another doctor, went to another doctor, went to another doctor. And by the time I got to the 8th doctor, I had to significantly exaggerate his symptoms and pretend all these things that were happening weren't happening. Finally got his MRI. 50% of his brain is dead, half of his brain. He had a stroke in the womb. I was right the whole time.
So you lied to kind of get him the care that you felt like he needed.
Which he did. Ethical lying again.
How do you decide when lying is okay?
In my opinion, lying is okay when it is to benefit somebody who is in need, who is not yourself necessarily, or if it is only negatively affecting somebody who is, in your opinion, a bad person or not necessarily a worthy person.
What's essential to a close relationship is trust. Initially, when I discovered my trust had been broken, I was shocked. I was kind of in disbelief. It was really hard to process. You know, I held on to the secret for so long that I kind of accepted that I always would, and it was really heavy on me. Many years ago, I was living with my partner at the time. We lived very close to my family home, and my parents were overseas, so they asked me to check in on my family and prepare dinner. I cooked dinner and then I was washing up. And I distinctly remember one of my family members calling out, screaming out from downstairs, calling my name out. I went downstairs and my sister and her partner at the time, they were in the bedroom, I believe being intimate, and my sister was saying, I think someone was filming us. Oh my God, someone's filming us. She swears that she saw a red light out the window and heard some noises. We never found the person that we thought was filming. We believed it to be the next door neighbour and we left it at that. A few years later, I was still living with the same partner. We loved each other and I trusted him. So I allowed him to film us one night being intimate. I remember distinctly waking up thinking, I wonder what I look like on film. And when I was washing some of his clothes out of a sports bag, I found the video camera. Obviously, I went to look at the footage of us being intimate the night before. When I ran the tape further and I pressed play, I heard my sister calling my name, which instantly flashed me back. And I could hear the conversation transpiring on the videotape that I recall having that night in my parents' home. I realised my partner has been lying to me the whole time. It was him that filmed my family member all those years ago. When I discovered, I did keep it a secret. Other than speaking to my partner, I never spoke to anyone. I felt like keeping that secret, there was this dead weight on me for so long.
Olivia, you uncovered a life-changing secret that your then husband was a voyeur. What did you do with that information?
I confronted him, and after a lot of him apologising and saying it was an isolated incident and he'd never done it before and that was the one and only time, I took his silence as being remorseful for what he did, and I forgave him and continued the relationship.
You didn't tell anyone about what had happened. How did things progress from there?
We ended up getting married and we had children, and I had believed I'd forgiven him for something that had totally ceased.
Did his voyeurism stop?
No. I later discovered that a couple of years after we had children, he filmed a very close friend of mine. I had an inkling. I asked him and he denied it, and then it would be sometime after that he confessed to filming my best friend. We separated for a little while and then he came clean with all these people that he had videoed. And because he did that, I essentially believed he was wiping the slate clean. He said he'd get help for it. And I wanted to believe him. I had children, I had a family together.
Paul, your father revealed to you that he had been abused by the family priest. When did you tell your parents that you'd also been abused by the same man?
So it took me 10 years afterwards to fully understand what had happened to me. And at that time in society, things had started to change. In Victoria, there'd been parliamentary inquiries, and also there'd been progress because there'd been criminal cases being raised against Rebecca. At the time, the Catholic Church's response to pedophile priests was called the Melbourne response in the 90s. Through the Melbourne response, and I became aware of it through my father. It was a quasi-legal process set up by the church because in the case at the time, the church is an entity that you weren't able to claim for damages or seek recompense from. Through that process, Dad made it aware of it, and as that we were declared what was known as a secondary victim. And as a secondary victim, the church provided counselling. Through that process of receiving counselling and returning to the presbytery where my abuse happened, it became apparent to me, I learnt that, I had a secret.
What was happening to you emotionally at this time?
Yes, I was suffering significantly emotionally, and it became apparent, I think, through my actions that I had a problem. And working with a counsellor, I learnt at that time the impact it had on me.
Was it difficult deciding to tell your parents?
It was extremely difficult, but it also felt necessary because of the public nature of what was happening around us at the time. Also, through the Melbourne response, my concern was once I went to them and was identified as a primary victim, that would then become known to my family. So I chose to tell them then what had happened.
How did your parents react when you told them?
Oh, they were devastated. Absolutely devastated. They still are.
Michael, you said the majority of us are holding a secret at any one time. What's been the biggest secret in your life?
The biggest secret that was ever revealed to me was revealed to me at the end of a very long day of a job interview where I was presenting my new research on secrecy at the time. And after this very long day, I get a call from my dad around midnight. I think, oh no, something really bad must have happened that he's calling me at this hour. And when I got on the phone with him, he told me, he said, "Are you sitting down? I need to tell you that I'm not your biological father."
So you were born through donor conception?
Right.
How did you feel after you learnt that truth?
I mean, I immediately had two questions. What about my brother, my younger brother? He was also born by donor conception by a different donor. And number two, why are you telling me this now? For me, the shocking thing wasn't this big revelation, it was the secret keeping that bothered me. Why they planned to never tell us, in fact, but we found out.
Are there positives to getting a secret out in the open?
Definitely. There were things that made the relationships with my dad and his parents more special, not less special. When we reveal a secret, we get to talk about it with other people. Those other people could tell us it's okay. We can work through it together.
What if someone else reveals your secret to others?
It's a betrayal of trust. Sometimes there's a reason why something is secret. When these things are happening, sometimes people are essentially trying to punish what they see as wrongful behavior. You tell me something I think is wrong, I tell someone else kind of as a way of punishing it.
Danielle, you began to physically transition 7 years ago. What was life like for you at that point?
I had just moved out of the AFL industry. After being diagnosed, I rang my then ex-wife, who had some idea, and I told her. And the first thing we spoke about was we need to sit the kids down. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That was taken away from me being able to tell friends, family, children, mother, brother, father, people I worked with.
Your gender identity became public soon after this. Was that your choice?
No. Looking back on it, leading up to that time, I was making some not good choices. I was in a dispute around a property, and because I was going so bad, I rang the police myself to come and arrest me for being at the property.
Okay, so there was a dispute at the property, and you call the police and say, "Come and arrest me."
But then I get arrested, and while I'm in custody, there was a dozen Victorian police members in the police station who were sort of laughing at me, made me feel like an animal in the zoo.
What happened?
There was a police member who was taking photos of me at my most vulnerable in the police station, and within literally hours, it was on social media, it was on the front page of the papers here in Australia, and it's caused me, and particularly my family, a lot of trauma.
Donna, you and Danielle have been partners for 4 years. When did you first meet?
1973.
Wow.
So a long time ago, 51 years ago. We were like the little boyfriend, girlfriend. You know, back in the day, you'd go around with each other and then you'd drop them the following week. Well, that was us.
Donna would drop me all the time.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that term for a while.
It was the 70s.
We was the 70s, yeah.
How did you discover that Danielle is trans?
The same way the rest of the world did. We were very close and I actually got those photos sent to me and I lied because so many people knew how close I was with Danielle that I said that I knew and that there's more to this story and just to back off and leave Danny alone. But I didn't know, no.
What was it like seeing her secret exposed like that?
I knew that Danny wasn't coping with a lot of things at that point in time. When I found out, the penny dropped that this was why Danny was going through so much hardship, and to expose anybody like that, I was really concerned that we would probably never get to enjoy Danny's company again. It would be that traumatic.
And she showed you a tattoo once?
Danny showed me a draft of a picture that was going to be a tattoo. And I, in fact, tried to talk you out of getting it done, didn't I? And then when I found out about Danny being trans, this tattoo, I believe, was telling me that Danny was screaming out to be seen. And I still didn't see it.
Danielle, what does that tattoo mean to you?
Sort of captures, that's how I felt pretty much my whole life.
Di, when you were 22, you gave birth to a baby boy. You were told that he died. 42 years later, you received an email from a stranger. What did it say?
It said, I was born on this date at this hospital and I think you are my mother. And yes, and then he just talked a bit about his life, that he was very happy, he was brought up in a loving family, he was married, and by the way, you're a grandmother.
How did you feel when you read that email?
I couldn't feel anything, I just couldn't breathe. And he also said that our daughter has a lot of your characteristics because they'd looked at me in Google and we didn't know where her curly hair came from. And I turned to a shelf that had pictures, family pictures in it, and there was a picture of me at about that age. Could have been twins.
Wow.
Yeah.
To adopt a baby out, you generally have to sign documentation. Did you ever find out how that could have happened?
I had a look and there was it was Julia Gillard, when she gave the apology for forced adoptions, had set up, or the government had set up, the Benevolent Society. And once I went in and started to have some counselling, they explained to me that I wasn't the only young girl that this had happened to. And then they explained to me, we went through what I could remember, and I said, well, the only thing I signed, because they told me I couldn't leave hospital, were the discharge papers. And I thought I was signing discharge papers.
But you were actually signing adoption papers. You'd never told anyone that you'd been pregnant and given birth. Did you tell your family about the email?
I called them and said, right here, we're going to have family dinner this week. And my son, my daughter was setting the table, and my son came out and just leant and he said, I know what it is.
Really?
I said, yeah, really? I don't think so. He said, yeah, I know. Okay. Right. I said, what do you think? And he said, you found God. And I went, what the fuck? Why would you think that? Why would you? You know me. And he said, because at that time I had been really ill. And he goes, well, when you were in hospital and the pastors or the priests would come through, you'd talk to them. And I said to him, darling, I'm bored in hospital. If someone's going to come in that's not the tea lady and talk to me, I'm going to have a chat like this. So he didn't guess.
What was it like when you told them?
I was crying. I still felt partly ashamed, and it occurred to me that revealing this secret could have an impact on my relationship with my other children. But I needn't have worried, because My daughter hugged me and she was crying, and then my youngest says, well, it doesn't change anything. And I went, it doesn't change anything. But I think the thing is too that with the three of us, we have a very close relationship, and they had it processed and we had dessert.
Rachel, you were told lies about why you were adopted as a baby. Did being drip-fed the truth change how you viewed the world?
Yeah, I assume that everyone is drip-feeding the truth constantly, and I struggle to trust anyone. I don't really trust anyone.
You're a single mum. Why did you choose to raise your son solo?
Yeah, so I had lots of relationships for many years because I wanted to be a mum. And eventually I realised that it was just not going to happen because I couldn't be in a relationship with a man, and I decided that I would have a baby on my own.
Do your trust issues affect your parenting?
Yes, in a good way though, I think. I don't know when or how I will be able to let my son ever have a sleepover, for example. I just don't trust what people do and say, and I don't want to find out one day that things have happened to my son 20 years on and he hasn't told me.
Are you always truthful with your son?
Yes. So he's 3.5. He knows he's donor conceived, and so he knows everything, and he always will. So I'm going to homeschool him. I'm a teacher, and I do love teaching. Different people would teach us about what makes a family, and I know that people have the best interests in mind of children when they say, well, you know, family, you need a man and you need a woman, but I didn't need a man, I needed sperm, and that's the way that I explain it to my son. And I don't want other people confusing him. And I know that if I send him to any educational institution, they will unintentionally, and sometimes intentionally, confuse him and make him feel less than he is because he's not mainstream.
Is there anything you would ever lie to your son about?
Oh, Santa Claus? The tooth fairy? I'm okay with those being drip-fed.
Chelsea, you believe your lies are ethical.
Yes.
How honest are you with your children?
Very honest with my children. Again, yes, Santa Tooth Fairy, I do that. However, my 10-year-old knows that those are not the truth, but also we agree that it's not necessarily a lie. It is more a shared magic experience that is sort of universal, especially among Western cultures especially, but it's not necessarily a lie because the magic continues on to adulthood. It doesn't stop. So that's how I'm justifying it to myself.
Has your ethical lying ever backfired?
Not in any meaningful way, except for maybe a little bit of embarrassment if you get caught.
Right.
But I'm not somebody who really cares about what people think of me, so it's a little bit like blush and move on.
Jenny, are you a secretive person?
2 days ago, I would have said absolutely not. I'm completely an open book. I have no boundaries. You can ask me how much I earn, how much have I got in the bank, how many people have I slept with. I'll tell you all those things. But I have been thinking a lot about this question of secrets, and I think I've kept secrets about my childhood. I think I've really edited my personality and told a certain story, which is true, but it's been very edited.
Is there a secret that you've been holding that has been troubling you?
Yes.
How long have you been holding this secret?
Since I was at high school, so that was 1980, 44 years ago.
Has keeping this secret for so long had an effect on you?
It's had a huge effect on me. So I've suffered from severe anxiety. I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I felt that I didn't belong. I'm a lawyer, a qualified lawyer, but I felt I didn't really quite belong. It's caused me great distress. It's meant that I've quit jobs because I just didn't feel that I belong. I'd have panic attacks. I'd be in great pain. I have fibromyalgia, so I've held on to this secret for a very, very long time. It's caused me pain, emotional distress and literally physical pain.
Why have you never told your secret?
I think it's because I didn't want to upset my family. When I've raised issues, they have literally, they've been dismissive of me. I did tell someone recently who I hadn't seen for 27 years and she believed it, but yet I hadn't told anybody at all for 44 years.
This has been weighing on you for decades,
Yes.
but you reached out to us because you said you wanted to come clean.
Yes.
What is your secret?
Oh, I haven't even told you yet. My secret, oh my goodness. My secret is I cheated on 2 exams at high school.
You cheated on 2 exams at high school. Why does it feel so bad to you?
Because I was trying so hard to please my mother, set an example for my siblings, please my high school teachers who had become almost like substitute parents because my own family situation was very, very difficult. And I think, and you would think, well, I don't think your teachers are really going to care about this 44 years later. But I think I did worry that they would not be happy about it. And I was a bit of a, not the star pupil, but yeah, they really had high hopes for me. And I wanted people to feel, I mean, that's been almost my mantra throughout life, you know, where there's life, there's hope. I wanted to instill people with hope and let people know, even if you've come from this really awful background or even if something terrible has happened to you, and I've had a lot of really terrible things happen to me, but I always wanted people to think there's always hope. And so it was so shameful that I'd presented this persona of someone who could overcome all the odds, but I'd actually cheated a little bit myself to get where I was. Now, it didn't affect my results probably, but yeah, it was shameful.
I was going to ask you that. Did the cheating help you get ahead?
I doubt it at all. Well, not at all. I mean, in terms of my career, it's definitely damaged my career, yet I've carried this secret.
How does it feel to get the secret off your chest?
It feels amazing. It's been the great unravelling. I'm constantly thinking about the fact that I really don't care anymore. Honesty's the best policy. I'm just saying whatever I think is bloody fantastic. If I don't like people, the claws come out, you know, and I mean, I don't hurt them, but it's just like, okay, you can get away now. I'm just a different person. I don't give a shit. And all my life sorry, I shouldn't say that, but I really don't give a shit anymore. I'm over being a fake person. I'm going to be me from now on. I've got my life planned out. The next 20 years, I know exactly what I'm doing. Anyone who gets in the way, sorry, the claws are coming out. That's it.
I'm glad we could provide such a great public service. Like we've done our job.
You really have.
Michael, you spoke about the effects of holding on to a secret. Does the magnitude of the secret matter?
It does, and it's the magnitude that you've decided on in your own head. It's so easy to find a specific unhelpful way of thinking about a secret if you're not talking about it with people. You often find the worst way of thinking about it.
Do you think it's ever too late to tell the truth?
No, and I learned this in my own story when I was asking my parents about the secret about the donor conception. I learned that my grandmother, my dad's mom, played a huge role in that, and she was so concerned that I would feel less a part of the family if I knew the truth. And I was so disappointed to learn that's how she thought about it, because I could have told her. Learning that secret made that relationship just so much more special. And I could have told her it was fine, but she had passed away before we could have that conversation.
Danielle, it's been 5 years since leaked photos exposed your trans identity. How has your life changed since that secret came to light?
It's a lot easier in some ways. I can be honest. I can be myself. I have a lot of love and support from people, particularly Donna, our kids, our parents. The other thing is I've sort of been pushed out as a transgender advocate for my community, and it's been wonderful. I've now met players that I've played with, players that I've coached. The AFL has been wonderful, particularly Gil McLaughlin towards the end of his tenure. He said to me in no uncertain terms that we'll help you break down as many barriers for your community as we can.
Olivia, after decades of living with your husband's secret voyeurism, you chose to end the relationship. What did you find out after you separated?
After we separated and after we divorced, I found out that there was a lot more footage. I also found out that it actually started prior to us actually dating. So initially I found a tape and we were just friends. And that led me to digitalise every single tape that I had in the house. So alongside family footage of holidays and children walking and learning to talk and stuff, I found very small snippets. Essentially, my marriage was a lie and I was keeping a secret for someone that had betrayed me the whole time. And yeah, I felt cheated.
Did you ever tell your family?
My family have only just found out recently and I actually didn't tell them. One of my members of my family actually went to look at my computer and I'd written some notes down and she obviously read it and then she actually confronted me and I told her.
Looking back, do you wish you had exposed his secret sooner?
100%. Some members of my family are a little bit upset with me because they believed I denied them the right of their own seeking justice for themselves.
Paul, you opened up about your abuse at the hands of your family priest. What became of your abuser?
Rebecca had been criminally charged for abuse against my father. And the day he was due in court, he passed away.
What was it like having told your secret to not see your abuser face judgment?
I see my abuser as the Catholic Church because whilst I was abused as a child, I feel like through their response that the church has continued to abuse me. After the Royal Commission, I commenced legal proceedings against the church. The legal change has allowed victims and survivors to sue the church for damages. It's a pretty brutal process. It's illegal, it's not therapeutic, and you have to stick it out. I'm fortunate because I have support and I've had the wherewithal to get through that, but victims of abuse in most cases have deep trauma, deep emotional impact and can't follow through. So I hope in talking about my story is that others see it and they recognise the situation and they gives them some courage to just fight on and seek justice that they need. But to come back to your original question, do I feel like I've achieved justice? I feel like I've done everything that I can now. And I'm so deeply grateful that the laws were changed to give me that chance.
Rachel, you wish you'd known the truth about your birth mother sooner. Did you ever look for her?
Yes. I've met her. When I was 18, my sister and I went to meet her and it was very disappointing. I had expected to meet, even with all of the information, even reading the letters, I thought I was going to meet Di. I still pictured Di. And I still pictured a woman who would embrace me. I've never actually hugged the woman who gave birth to me. We had a photo together, but I tell my son about her and he sees photos of her. There are no secrets. If he wants to meet her, he can, and I'd be happy for that. If he asked tomorrow at 3.5, can we go meet her? I would literally bundle him off to do it. But I personally can't live with it anymore because it's just riddled with burden and shame and guilt for me.
Di, it's been 6 years since your son first contacted you. Do you ever think about the time you lost with him?
No. I thought about that briefly, but for me it was about maintaining the joy of finding out that he was alive, to work on the relationship together, to embrace his family and have him embrace mine, his other siblings. I don't have a retrospectoscope. I can't change anything that happened over those decades. I have to put my energy into building relationships with him and with our family and just enjoying the moment.
What's your relationship like with him now?
We have a good relationship. We spend quite a bit of time together. My daughter had a baby almost 2 years ago now, and they adore him. And we've gone on family holidays, so we share a lot of things, which is really nice.
Di, thank you, and thank you to you all for being here. That's all we have time for. You can catch up on this episode or any others on SBS On Demand. I'll see you next time.